Executives and companies everywhere are facing daunting challenges. The world is in an incredibly uncertain state right now. Layoff rates are worse than ever, with companies cutting significant portions of their workforce. Teams are overwhelmed, performance feels stagnant, and the solutions that used to work, like outsourcing and temporary morale boosters, or even one-size-fits-all training programs, they just aren't cutting it anymore. Employee engagement is at an all-time low, while burnout is skyrocketing. And what happens because of all this? Well, first of all, teams are struggling. They're exhausted, they're frustrated, their productivity is low, and they're just not engaged. Executives are feeling increased pressure. And at the same time, along with that pressure, they're actually feeling diminishing confidence. Companies are being impacted by extended development cycles, millions of dollars wasted, and a constant cycle of short-term fixes without seeing any long-term results. And yet, if you look closely across global industries, a fascinating pattern emerges. A handful of companies that consistently outpace the rest. These companies don't just survive global shifts and challenges like COVID-19 or supply chain interruptions. These companies are thriving. This isn't luck. These organizations have cracked the code by integrating the right systems into their company-wide operations. Systems that elevate engagement and they drive efficiency, and they deliver measurable and repeatable success. Here's the interesting part that's always fascinated me. While the results are visible, the how, not so much. Very few are willing or able to share the frameworks that they use to build high-performing teams, or how anybody else can replicate their success. And the vast majority of companies who are not sharing those successes, they all struggle with the same thing: blind spots. Blind spots are places where not only do we not know something, but we don't even know there's something there that's knowable. And the worst part about blind spots, we assume we know what's going on and we understand how things work. This leads us to make bad decisions and to completely miss opportunities. And in the long run, that means we fail. Think Blockbuster doubting that Netflix could last, or Sears doubting that Amazon could impact their business, or Xerox, who invented the graphical user interface for computers that's ubiquitous today, but they thought it had no value. Leaders don't realize they have blind spots until somebody demonstrates and points it out for them. When I was at Google, I had 100+ people tell me something was technically and legally impossible. And when I finally got to talk with Google's attorneys, they laughed and said, why would they think it's illegal? And it's completely possible. This is an example of blind spots. And that's exactly why I'm making this video, to shine a light and help you see where you may have blind spots. Over the past 20 years, I've partnered with countless companies, helping to transform their team and unlock performance improvements. And these are performance improvements that the executives previously thought were impossible. How? By using a consistent framework that delivers results. It's the 40% better system. Today, I'm breaking it down in detail to show you how the 40% better system works and how you can leverage it to improve your team's performance, engagement, and overall success. To achieve this transformation, we'll be exploring two critical components. The first is the 40% better philosophy. This is an approach to team performance that focuses on psychological safety, intrinsic motivation, and effective collaboration. And the second is the exact system we use at 40% Better and how you can apply it. This is a clear step-by-step process for assessing and then improving your team's success metrics. In the end, you'll understand how to identify the gaps that are impacting your team, how to solve the problems that are creating those gaps, and ultimately how you too can get 40% improvement in your team's performance. Before we dive into the details, let me introduce myself. My name is Bill Lennon, and I'm the founder of 40% Better. 40% Better is a system designed to help people lead their teams to dramatic and consistent improvements in performance. Over the years, I've worked with teams at every stage, those that were thriving and those that were stuck. I've worked with startups, giant companies, and even brick and mortar businesses. My journey in Silicon Valley started as the second engineer at a startup. As we grew, I was tasked with building my first software team. And that team, it was incredibly productive. And then I was recruited to another startup where my small team outperformed one that was 5 times bigger. And soon, both peers and executives were pulling me aside and saying, how did your team do that? One thing that's become crystal clear, the difference between a high-performing team and a struggling team, it isn't talent or effort. It's actually psychological safety, intrinsic motivation, and alignment. Here's what you should know. Employee engagement, coding throughput, and internal promotions aren't just numbers. These are predictors of organizational success. High-performing teams aren't built with quick fixes or trendy methodologies. They're built by addressing fundamental issues in trust, intrinsic motivation, and team dynamics. And so if you're an executive who's tired of seeing your software teams stuck and you want measurable improvements, this video is for you. Let's start with the philosophy behind effective leadership and high-functioning teams. You could take any number of companies across various industries, and though their operations may differ, success always comes down to these core principles. First, what is the team lead's core responsibility? In every high-performing team that we found, the lead's number one job was to improve the performance of the team. This team performance improvement is also an improvement in the return on investment in the employee, which should be an obvious benefit. Second, Google's famous research on team effectiveness and high performance found that psychological safety was critical for high-performing teams. High-performing teams thrive on creating environments of psychological safety. Sadly, only a tiny handful of people actually know how to make this happen, to create this kind of environment, because most people have no idea that a system is possible to make that happen. Third, team leads need to understand, model, and leverage emotional resilience. I've heard from hundreds of leaders at every level that their emotions are the thing that's getting in the way of doing the right thing for their teams. This leads the teams to feel unsupported, untrusting, and ultimately, they're going to be disengaged. The fourth philosophical perspective is that team leads need to become excellent communicators. In tech and other industries, software team leads often start out as shy introverts, and they don't understand how staying like this actually has a crippling effect on their team. Learning targeted skills for social engagement, research, and persuasion, those are a game changer, even if you happen to be an extrovert. Full disclosure, I struggled for decades with social anxiety. I was that shy introvert. This system got me out of my social anxiety, and I've now taught hundreds of other people to replicate my results. And the fifth philosophy is that team leads need to turn their behaviors into habits. I say habits because that's really the easy path to consistent behavior and consistent improvement. This is what the 40% Better philosophy is built on, is these 5 items. Without these, team leads will never be able to create the environment for truly excellent performance. With the right philosophies in place, what's next is applying the right processes. At its core, the 40% Better system is built around 4 main processes. The first is finding friction within the system. The foundation for improving team performance is always about removing friction. Whether you're working with an in-house, remote, or even an outsourced team, finding and removing frictions always improves performance. Removing friction has the added benefit of improving the psychological safety of the team members and their trust in the leadership. The second part of the process is finding incentives that work. What drives the people on the team? If you ask 5 people, you're going to get 5 different answers. In a workplace setting, everybody on the team needs to be able to see their drivers as being supported. This means that team leads need to talk with and understand very deeply each person on their team. And the team leads need to be consistently checking in with everybody on their team to make sure the team members are seeing and appreciating the progress of the team. This also allows the team leads to understand if drivers have changed. The third part of the process is recognizing the value of individual performance. The famous quarterback Tom Brady, he never played on the defensive line because that wasn't his strength. Individuals can excel when we set them up for success. Unlike Tom, people on your team, they're going to want to try different positions, different responsibilities, learn different skills. You should let them. Help them find the place where they're going to become most effective. And the fourth is understanding and improving team dynamics. A truly cohesive team is more than the sum of its parts. You can leverage paired programming, team design solutions, and lots of public accolades. Finding friction. Employees become incredibly frustrated when they keep banging their heads into the same internal frictions over and over again. This is also a test of their leadership to see if anything will be done when they complain about problems that are getting in the way of their productivity. Unfortunately, team leads regularly ignore or deflect complaints. And they do this because they don't understand the impact it has on trust, psychological safety, and the team's performance. Performance crashes when the company ignores its people. And finding friction is actually quite easy. All team leads have to do is ask during their one-on-ones. And once we start to hear those frictions, we document them, we force rank them, and then we start working on addressing them. Once you've started addressing frictions, the next thing to look for is incentives. One of the things that there's a lot of research on is how much people are getting paid. And once you get past a certain level, money becomes a very low-level driver. It doesn't improve people's performance when you pay them more money. Instead, you need to find what it is that drives them that's not money. We've found that understanding their aspirations and getting them connected to the company's missions and values are very valuable. People want to contribute their best work. They want to be recognized. They want to have good equipment. And they want to see a clear path for career advancement. Unfortunately, most companies, they just ignore these incentives and they wonder why their people are disengaged. Over the years, we've improved incentives for our teams by changing meeting schedules, by changing company policies, by bringing in the right kinds of trainers, and even something as simple as upgrading equipment. And all these incentive improvements also were great productivity improvements. The next area to look at is individual performance. Team leads need to understand where their people want to work their hardest. Intrinsic motivation, being motivated inside of ourselves. This is the leverage for both being happy at work and amazing productivity. When you can support people's career aspiration, it feeds that intrinsic motivation and it builds trust in the team lead as well as the company's executive leadership. We've seen people put in amazing effort as they were allowed to be focused in areas that really excited them. And this also makes them a very easy promotion because they've already proven to everyone their abilities. Team dynamics. Teams will always outperform an individual. This is true in sports just as it is in business. One of the ways to have the team really feel connected and high performing is to make sure that the team lead doesn't look like the smartest person in the room. This will suffocate the team and squash performance. Team members should be consistently and gently asked to contribute to all the different kinds of problem solving that a team is involved in. And we especially need to focus on the shy introverts on the team. The shy introverts are often the smartest people in the room, but frequently their team leads don't realize that because the extroverts who easily speak up in team meetings, they overshadow everyone else. What we're talking about here is building an environment of psychological safety and trust. Creating trust brings the introverts in so that they can contribute more, and it levels everyone up. So how do team leads actually execute on this? Now, to make these things work, we consistently found 5 pillars that the leaders of the best teams were using. All of our research, all the different industries, over and over and over again, we found these same 5 pillars being used, even when these great team leads couldn't actually explain what it was they were doing. If you've read Tribal Leadership, for example, and wondered, how did they get there? These pillars are the answer. So the first pillar is mental models. The team lead's #1 job is to improve performance. This is a mental model that the best team leads just take for granted. The best mental models are empowering for team leads, and that empowerment for the team lead actually leads to a huge benefit for the team themselves. Now, on the flip side, I have heard team leads over and over again share self-limiting beliefs, self-limiting mental models, which not only has impacted them, but it's had a knock-on impact, a very negative impact on the performance of the whole rest of the team. The saddest part about these negative mental models, the team leads didn't even consider that something else was possible. So we found a dozen mental models that helps team leads be empowered and then help the team members be even more empowered. The second of the pillars is emotional resilience. One of the things I've heard over and over again from team leads who weren't performing very well is that's too scary. Even when they know that doing something is going to be very beneficial for the team, their fear gets in the way. And what's interesting is the thing that they fear is things that I've done dozens of times, if not more. With the stack of emotional resilience skills, team leads aren't blocked by fear. The other benefit of having these skills is it allows team leads to talk about stress, to share with their team how they're managing stress, and actually help the team manage their stress better than they were before. Without emotional resilience skills, team leads are wearing concrete boots and the water is rising. The third pillar is communication. How come nobody brought this to me before? This is a question from an executive after enthusiastically saying yes to a request for budget to buy equipment for my team. Team leads need to understand the incentives or the success metrics of the people around them. And this requires curiosity, investigation, and perseverance. Team leads also need to learn how to be persuasive and how to frame requests in the success metrics of the people they're talking with. I've heard team leads over and over share how they won't go talk to executives because they don't know how to speak with them in a fashion that is persuasive. By the way, that executive who said, how come nobody's brought this to me before? He had had that same request from other people at least 5 times, and he'd said no every time. It was the framing of the request that allowed him to say yes to me and allowed my team to benefit greatly. The fourth pillar is power dynamics. You have all the power here. This was the answer that I was told by a company founder when I was trying to find help for my team. He explained it that as a team lead, I had the most leverage to help the performance of the people on my team. And that gave me the power to then talk with anybody in the company about anything I wanted to talk to them about, which gets us back to communication being important because you have to be able to communicate effectively when you have that power. And from that point, as I continued through my career, it became very clear that effective communication was one of the keys to leveraging power dynamics effectively. We found that leaders who understand power dynamics are constantly able to deliver those impossible projects, and their peers don't understand how it's happening. And the last of the pillars is habits, because this is how everything that we're doing becomes easy. Whether you're making coffee, walking the dog, setting a table, or driving the car, these all happen easily because we have habits. Checking on team members, checking on friction, removing another friction, and sharing status updates with executives. These are all business habits that can be consistently repeated with a very high degree of success. Transforming your teams is not about working harder, it's about working smarter. By applying the 40% better system, you'll not only help your teams achieve measurable success, but you're also building an environment where every individual can thrive. If your team is stuck or exhausted or falling short of their potential, let's talk. Send me a message and I'll personally help you identify what's missing for your teams and how our system can make your teams 40% better. Let's build the teams you've always imagined. One that's engaged, effective, and consistently delivering results.